I didn't lose my house in court. I lost it in my son's kitchen. Ethan stood there calm as ever and said something I still hear in my sleep. He said, "Mum, this house belongs to Vanessa now. Not we decided. Not we talked about it. Belongs. Like I was a guest who stayed too long." I laughed at first, that shocked, nervous laugh your body makes when reality hits too fast. But he didn't laugh back. He just looked at me and said, "She's my wife. That's how it works." That's when I realized something terrifying. This wasn't about paperwork. It wasn't about marriage. It was about permission, about whether I was still allowed to exist in a life I helped build. And in that moment, I knew I was being quietly pushed out without anyone ever touching me. I still remember the sound of the dishwasher that morning, low, steady, normal. That's what messes with me the most. Nothing felt wrong. I was wearing my soft beige sweater standing at the kitchen counter drying a mug I didn't even need. Just something to keep my hands busy. Ethan leaned against the island, scrolling on his phone. Vanessa wasn't in the room, but somehow she still was. You know that feeling? When someone isn't there, but their presence fills the space anyway. That. Ethan cleared his throat. Not loud, not dramatic, just enough to make me look up. "Mom," he said, finally putting the phone down, "we need to talk." And right there, my stomach dropped. Because when your grown son says we need to talk, it's never about dinner plans. I turned off the dishwasher. The silence felt heavy immediately. He didn't sit down, didn't invite me to sit either. He crossed his arms and said it calmly, too calmly. "Mom, you need to understand something." I waited. He took a breath like he'd practiced this. "This house," he said, gesturing around the kitchen, "belongs to Vanessa now." I laughed, not because it was funny, but because my brain needed a second to process what my heart already knew was bad. I said, "I'm sorry." "What?" He sighed. That tired sigh people make when they think you're being difficult. "She's my wife," he said, "and this is her home. That's how marriage works." Belongs. That word landed wrong. Heavy. Permanent. Like I'd missed a meeting where my life got reassigned. I looked around the kitchen, the counters I wiped every morning, the cabinet handle I'd fixed with my own screwdriver, the corner where Ethan used to sit as a kid, feet swinging, waiting for pancakes, and suddenly, none of it felt like mine anymore. I said carefully, "Ethan, I helped pay for this house." He nodded. Quick, dismissive. "I know, and I appreciate that," he said. "But things are different now." Different. That's the word people use when they don't want to say you don't matter like you used to. I felt stupid standing there, like I'd walked into a conversation that started long before I entered the room. I asked him, "Did Vanessa ask you to say this?" He didn't answer right away. That pause, that was the answer. "She just wants clarity," he said finally. "Boundaries." Boundaries. Funny how boundaries always show up after someone decides you're in the way. I wanted to argue. I wanted to remind him of late nights, packed lunches, hospital scares, scraped knees. But something in his eyes stopped me. He wasn't angry. He wasn't cruel. He was decided. And that scared me more than yelling ever could. Because yelling can be taken back. Decisions usually can't. Vanessa walked in then, coffee mug in hand, hair perfect, eyes sharp. She smiled at me. Not warm, polite, like you smile at someone you tolerate. "Everything okay?" she asked. Ethan answered for me. "Yeah," he said. "We're just clearing some things up." She nodded, satisfied. And in that moment, I understood the truth. This wasn't about ownership. It was about permission, about reminding me whose name came first now. And as I stood there holding a mug I didn't need, in a kitchen that suddenly felt joy, I realized something painful. I wasn't being kicked out. I was being rewritten, quietly. That was the first morning I realized I didn't know the rules anymore. Not the house rules, the new rules. I woke up early like I always did. Old habits don't disappear just because your place in the house does. I put on my light grey cardigan, tied my hair back, and walked into the kitchen quietly. Didn't want to wake anyone. The smell of coffee usually made the place feel safe. That morning, it didn't. Vanessa was already there, standing at the counter, laptop open, phone beside it. She looked busy, important. She didn't look up when I entered. I waited, just for a second. Then I said, "Good morning." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, hey, Rose," she said, dragging my name out like it was an afterthought. "Can you not make coffee right now?" I blinked. "I'm sorry." She finally looked at me. Not annoyed, just inconvenienced. "I'm on a call in a bit," she said. "The smell kind of throws me off." The smell. Coffee. In the kitchen. I nodded. Of course I did. Because what else do you do when you're trying not to make things worse? I stepped back and leaned against the wall. That's when I noticed it. A small whiteboard on the fridge. Neatly written. Colour-coded. Vanessa's handwriting. Kitchen schedule. Quiet hours. Shared spaces guidelines. I stared at it longer than I should have. She followed my eyes and smiled again. "Oh," she said casually. "I made that last night. Just helps keep things smooth. Smooth. That word again." I asked, "Was Ethan okay with this?" She shrugged. "He trusts me." That was it. That was the sentence. Not "we decided." Not "we talked." Just, "he trusts me." I felt something tighten in my chest. I wanted to say I raised him. I taught him to trust, but the words stayed stuck. Instead, I nodded. Again. She closed her laptop and grabbed her mug. "Oh, and one more thing," she said like she was remembering groceries. "I'd appreciate it if you didn't rearrange things anymore." I frowned. "Rearrange?" "The pantry," she said, "and the linen closet. I like knowing where everything is." I almost laughed. Almost. Because I'd been organising that pantry for years. Because I knew where things were in the dark. But now, apparently that was a problem. She took a sip of her coffee and said, "It's just easier if things stay consistent." Consistent for who? I went back to my room after that, closed the door softly, sat on the edge of the bed. And that's when it hit me. Not like a slap, more like a slow leak. I wasn't being yelled at. I wasn't being accused. I was being managed. Every word polite, every rule reasonable. And somehow that made it worse. Because how do you fight something that sounds so calm? I stared at my hands. They looked older than I remembered. I thought about all the times I'd been told I was helpful, reliable, needed. And now, I was a variable. Something to control. That afternoon, Ethan texted me, "Hey, Mom, just try to go with the flow, okay? Vanessa's just trying to make the house run better." Better. There it was again. I didn't reply, because I was starting to understand something terrifying. If I said too much, I'd be labelled difficult. If I stayed quiet, I'd disappear. And I didn't know which scared me more. The first time she embarrassed me, it wasn't even inside the house. It was outside. Public. Like she wanted witnesses. We were at the grocery store, our regular one. The place where the cashier still remembered Ethan as a kid who used to sneak candy bars into the cart. I wore my muted olive coat, zipped up tight. It was cold out, but I didn't mind. Cold feels honest. Vanessa pushed the cart. I walked a half step behind them. That was my new position. Ethan was scrolling on his phone, barely paying attention. Vanessa was laser-focused. Labels, prices, brands. She stopped suddenly and reached for a box of disinfectant wipes. Not the gentle kind. The strong stuff. Hospital grade. She dropped them into the cart and said, loud enough for the aisle to hear, "Please don't use these around the house anymore." I froze. People slowed down around us. You can always feel it when strangers pretend not to listen. I asked quietly, "What do you mean?" She didn't lower her voice. "I mean," she said, smiling tight, "the smell is a lot. It makes the house feel like a clinic. Clinic, Hospital. There it was again. I felt my face get hot. Ethan looked up then. Finally. Vanessa? He started. She cut him off. I'm not trying to be rude, she said, still smiling. I just think it's important we keep the house feeling warm, inviting. She looked at me. Don't you agree, Rose? I nodded. Of course I did, because disagreeing would have made me the problem. A woman nearby glanced over. Not curious, sympathetic. That look cut deeper than words. At checkout, Vanessa paid. She always made sure of that now. When the cashier asked if we wanted bags, Vanessa answered, yes, paper. And please don't put the cleaning products with the food. She glanced at me again. I'm sensitive to contamination. Contamination, like I was something that leaked. Outside, as we loaded the trunk, she spoke softly, just for me. You know, she said, I really do appreciate everything you've done. I waited. But things change, she continued, and people have to learn when to step back. Step back. From what? My son? My life? She closed the trunk gently. Not a slam, never a slam. That's how she did it. Everything polite, everything precise. On the drive home, no one spoke. Ethan kept his eyes on the road. I watched the houses pass by and realized something. This wasn't about hygiene. It was about image. She wanted the world to see me as extra, outdated, in the way. At home, I went straight to my room, sat on the bed, didn't cry, not yet. I stared at the wall and thought about how easy it is to erase someone without ever raising your voice. All you have to do is make them feel small, slowly, publicly, and with a smile. And for the first time, I wondered something dangerous. If I stayed quiet long enough, would anyone even notice when I was gone? That night, the house felt different. Not loud, not tense, just quiet in a way that made my chest feel tight. I changed into my soft navy house dress, folded my olive coat, and placed it neatly on the chair. Old habits again, trying to keep order when everything inside me felt scattered. I heard them in the living room. Ethan's low voice, Vanessa's soft laugh. They were relaxed. That hurt more than the grocery store ever could. I stood in the hallway for a moment, debating whether to walk past them or wait it out. I chose to walk. Vanessa noticed me immediately. She always did. Rose, she said sweetly, can we talk for a second? Ethan didn't look up, didn't say a word. That was strike one. We stepped into the dining room. The lights were dim. Everything felt staged. She leaned against the table, arms crossed, calm as ever. I want to clear the air, she said, because I feel like there's been some tension. Tension. I nodded. She continued, I just want us to coexist peacefully, but that only works if everyone knows their role. Role. There it was, I said carefully. And what role is that? She smiled, the kind of smile that doesn't ask permission. Support, she said. Background, respectful. I felt my throat tighten. She took a step closer, not aggressive, measured. You've had a big presence in Ethan's life, she continued, and I respect that, truly. Then her tone shifted. But now he has a wife, a future, and too many voices can confuse a man. Confuse, like I was noise. I glanced toward the living room. Ethan was still there, still silent. I said, Did Ethan tell you to say this? She didn't answer right away. Then she said, He agrees. Strike two. She straightened up and added, I think it would be healthier if you started spending more time in your room. More independence. Independence. In the house I helped build, I felt something crack inside me. Not loudly, just enough to hurt. I asked, And if I don't? She tilted her head slightly. Then things get uncomfortable, she said. And I don't want that for anyone. That was the threat, soft, polite, wrapped in concern. We walked back into the living room. Ethan finally looked at me. For a second, I thought he might say something. Anything. but he just nodded at Vanessa and said, "Everything good?" She smiled. "All good." Strike three. I went to my room after that, closed the door, sat on the bed in my navy dress, hands folded, staring at nothing. That's when it hit me. His silence wasn't confusion. It was permission. By saying nothing, he'd chosen her. And for the first time since this all started, I stopped asking why. I started asking how long. How long before I was asked to leave the table, the house, their lives? I lay back and stared at the ceiling, and a thought crept in. Quiet. Dangerous. If I was already invisible, what would happen if I stopped trying to be seen? It happened 2 days later. Not in a dramatic way. No collapse, no shouting for help. Just quiet weakness. I woke up feeling off, heavy, like my body was moving through mud. I sat up slowly wearing my pale lavender nightgown and waited for the room to stop spinning. It didn't. I told myself it was nothing. Too little sleep. Too much stress. I stood up anyway. That was my mistake. By the time I reached the hallway, my legs felt shaky. The walls looked farther apart than they should have been. I leaned against the door frame and took a breath. That's when Vanessa walked past me. Phone in hand, AirPods in, focused. She saw me. I know she did. I said her name softly. "Vanessa?" She pulled one AirPod out. "Yes?" "I don't feel very well," I said. My voice sounded small. I hated that. She looked me up and down, not worried, assessing. "Did you eat?" she asked. "I tried," she nodded. "Low blood sugar, maybe. You should lie down." That was it. No offer to help. No concern. She put the AirPod back in and walked away. I made it back to my room somehow, sat on the bed, then lay down. The ceiling blurred. I don't know how long I was there. Minutes. An hour. At some point, Ethan came home. I heard his keys, his voice. I called out. Not loud, just enough. "Ethan?" He didn't hear me. Or maybe. He didn't listen. Later, Vanessa came in. She stood at the door. Didn't step inside. "You okay?" she asked. I nodded slowly. "I think I need to see a doctor," she sighed. Not angry. Annoyed. "Tonight," she said. "I have an early meeting tomorrow." That sentence did something to me. It settled things. I said, "It can wait." She smiled, relieved. "Good," she said. "Just try to rest." She closed the door gently. That night, I lay there shaking. Not violently. Just enough to feel scared. I thought about all the times I'd rushed Ethan to the doctor for fevers that turned out to be nothing. How I never once thought it was inconvenient. Sometime after midnight, the shaking stopped. I fell asleep. The next morning, I was better. Not good, but standing. Vanessa noticed. "See?" she said lightly over breakfast. "You're fine." Fine. That word felt like a dismissal stamp. Ethan didn't say much. Didn't ask questions. Didn't apologize. And that's when I understood something I didn't want to admit. My health didn't scare them. My presence did. Because sick people require care. And care requires responsibility. I wasn't a priority, I was a complication. And for the first time, I stopped wondering if I was welcome. I started wondering how long I had before they decided I was a liability. She didn't tell me to leave. That's the part people don't understand. She suggested it, like it was a favor. Like she was helping me. It was mid-afternoon when she brought it up. The house was quiet. Ethan was at work. I was sitting in the living room, wearing my soft oatmeal-coloured sweater, folding laundry I hadn't even been asked to do. Vanessa sat across from me on the couch. Perfect posture, phone face down, prepared. She smiled first. "I've been thinking," she said. That sentence alone made my shoulders tense. She crossed her legs and continued. "You've been through a lot lately." I nodded. "I just worry this environment might be too much for you." Environment. Like the house itself was hostile. She leaned forward slightly. "My sister has a guest room," she said. Just for a little while, somewhere quieter, less stress. I stared at her. My mouth opened, but nothing came out. She rushed in before I could speak. I'm not kicking you out, she said quickly. I'd never do that. Of course not. I just think space could be healthy for everyone. Everyone. I asked quietly. Does Ethan know about this? She hesitated. Just a beat. He trusts my judgment, she said. That sentence again. I looked down at the towels in my lap, neatly folded, white, clean, temporary. I said, so, when? She smiled gently. No rush, she said. But sooner might be better. Sooner. I nodded, because at this point nodding was survival. That night I packed one bag, just essentials, clothes, toiletries, a small framed photo of Ethan when he was 10. I wore my simple charcoal travel jacket and stood by the door. Ethan came home as I was zipping the bag. He looked confused. What's going on? He asked. I said, Vanessa thinks it might be good if I stay with her sister for a bit. He frowned. Oh, he said. Yeah, that might be good. Good. He didn't ask how long, didn't ask why, didn't ask how I felt. Vanessa stood behind him, arms crossed, calm. I looked at my son, really looked, and for the first time I saw a stranger, someone who'd chosen peace over truth, comfort over loyalty. I hugged him. He hugged back, loose, distracted. Vanessa handed me my bag. I'll text you, she said. I stepped outside. The door closed behind me, softly. No slam. I stood there for a second, keys still in my hand. Then I realized something. I hadn't brought them. I didn't have keys anymore. That was when it hit. I hadn't just left the house. I'd been removed, quietly, politely. And as I walked down the driveway, I felt something unexpected. Not anger, not grief, clarity. Because when someone shows you exactly how little space they've left for you, you finally see how much space you still have inside yourself. I stayed with Vanessa's sister for exactly 3 nights. That's all I could take. Not because she was unkind. She wasn't. But because kindness that comes from obligation still feels temporary. I slept on a narrow bed in a small guest room, wearing my soft charcoal cardigan, staring at a ceiling that wasn't mine. The house was quiet. Too quiet. No footsteps I recognized. No sounds that meant home. On the second night, I couldn't sleep. I sat up, feet on the floor, hands resting on my knees, and something strange happened. The tightness in my chest loosened. For the first time in weeks, no one needed me to shrink. No one needed me silent. No one needed me invisible. That scared me. Because silence gives you room to think. And once you start thinking, you start remembering. I remembered the paperwork, the documents I'd signed years ago when Ethan and I bought the house together. Everyone assumed it was simple. Mother helps son. Son gets married. Life moves on. But I'd never been careless. I kept copies of everything. I always had. The next morning, I put on my simple navy blouse, brushed my hair, and sat at the small desk in the guest room. I opened my old email account, scrolled. There it was. The deed. My name. Still there. Clear as day. Not erased, not transferred. Just ignored. I felt my hands tremble, not from fear, from something else, something steadier. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't imagining things. The house didn't just belong to Vanessa because she said so. Ownership wasn't a vibe. It was ink, paper, law. That afternoon, Ethan called. His voice sounded careful. Mom, how are you doing? I paused, really paused. I'm okay, I said. Not apologetic, not emotional, just okay. Oh, he replied. That's good. We sat in silence. Then he said, Vanessa just wants what's best for everyone. There it was again. Everyone. I didn't argue, didn't explain, didn't defend myself. I said, I know. And something shifted, because for the first time, I wasn't trying to convince him. I was listening to how rehearsed he sounded, listening to how much of his voice wasn't his anymore. After the call, I went for a walk. Cold air, clear sky. I wore my dark grey coat, hands in pockets, each step steady, and with every step, I felt something settle into place. I didn't need revenge, I didn't need drama, I needed truth. That night, I booked a consultation with a lawyer. Nothing dramatic, just information, because knowledge is quiet power, and quiet power scares people who rely on noise. I went to bed early, slept deeply, no shaking, no racing thoughts, because for the first time since this started, I wasn't reacting. I was preparing, and that's when I understood something important. They thought pushing me out would make me weak. They forgot something. I raised a man. I survived decades. And I never walked away from something that was mine, just because someone asked nicely. The lawyer's office didn't look like the movies. No dark wood, no dramatic silence, just beige walls, soft lighting, and a man who spoke carefully. I wore my clean white button-down shirt and soft slate blue scarf, sitting upright, hands folded like I was back in school. He adjusted his glasses and looked over the documents. Didn't rush, didn't frown. That was a good sign. "Well," he said finally, tapping the page lightly. "Your name is still on the deed." I nodded. "I thought so." He looked at me. Really looked. "You didn't just co-sign," he continued. "You're a legal co-owner." Co-owner. Not former, not secondary. Present. Active. He flipped another page. "And unless you signed a transfer, which you didn't, no one can force you out." Force. That word felt grounding. I asked, "Even if my son's married?" He gave a small, knowing smile. "Marriage doesn't erase ownership," he said. "Paperwork does." I walked out of that office lighter. Not happy. Grounded. That afternoon, Vanessa texted me. "Hope you're settling in. No rush coming back. Take your time. No rush." She thought she was in control. I didn't respond. That night, Ethan called again. His voice sounded different, less confident. "Mum," he said, "Vanessa mentioned you might be gone longer." I let the silence stretch. "I haven't decided yet," I said. "Oh," he replied. Pause. Then, "She's just trying to keep things stable." Stable. Funny how stability always favours the person holding the keys. I said, "Ethan, whose name is on the house?" He froze. I could hear it in his breathing. "I mean," he said slowly, "it's complicated." I smiled. "It's actually not," I said. "My name's still there." Silence, longer this time. "Mum," he said, lowering his voice, "Vanessa thinks you're overthinking this." I didn't argue. I said, "Tell her I'll be back tomorrow." He inhaled sharply. "Tomorrow?" "Yes." That word landed hard. The next morning I dressed carefully. My tailored navy blazer, pressed. My cream blouse, neat. I looked like myself again. Not small, not temporary. When I walked into the house, Vanessa was already there. She looked surprised, just for a second. Then she smiled. "Oh," she said lightly. "You're back." "Yes," I said. "I live here." The air shifted. She laughed softly. "Of course," she said. "We'll talk later." We didn't. She avoided me all day. Ethan barely spoke. That evening I placed my suitcase back in my room. Not quietly, not loudly. Normally. And that's when I knew. She'd never checked the paperwork. She'd assumed silence meant surrender. She mistook patience for weakness. And people like that. They don't panic when they're winning. They panic when they realize they never owned the board. Vanessa didn't raise her voice. That's how I knew she was scared. She waited until Ethan left for work the next morning. The house was quiet again. But this time, the quiet felt alert. I was in the kitchen wearing my soft ivory knit sweater, pouring myself tea. No rushing. No nerves. She leaned against the doorway. Casual. Too casual. "Rose," she said, smiling lightly. "Can we talk?" I nodded and took my cup to the table. She sat across from me, close enough to feel intentional. I just want to make sure we're on the same page, she began, because things felt tense yesterday. Tense. She loved that word. I stirred my tea slowly. I didn't feel tense, I said. I felt informed. Her smile twitched. She recovered quickly. Well, she said, Ethan and I have been building a life together, and sometimes that means making hard decisions. I looked at her. Really looked. You mean assumptions, I said. Her posture stiffened. I'm not sure what you mean. I took a sip of tea. I mean, I said evenly, you assumed I'd disappear quietly. That did it. Her smile thinned. She leaned back, crossing her arms. No one asked you to disappear, she said. We just wanted balance. Balance. Funny how balance always meant less of me. I said, you asked me to leave my own home. She exhaled sharply. I suggested space, she corrected. For your own good. I smiled. Not sarcastic. Certain. You don't get to decide what's good for me, I said. And you don't get to decide who owns this house. Her eyes flicked away. Just for a second. She said, Ethan and I are married. I nodded. And I'm still on the deed. Silence. Heavy. Unavoidable. She straightened up. Ethan knows what's best, she said firmly. Does he? I asked. That question hung there. Because the truth was obvious. She stood abruptly. I don't want this to turn ugly, she said. I remained seated. It won't, I replied. As long as we're honest, she scoffed quietly. You're being dramatic. I laughed, soft. Vanessa, I said. I've been silent. That's not drama. Her phone buzzed. She checked it. Ethan. Of course. She stood, pacing slightly. First time I'd seen her move without control. We can figure this out, she said. There's no need to involve lawyers. I looked up. There already are lawyers, I said calmly. That stopped her. She froze. What? I spoke to one, I continued, just to understand my rights. Her face changed. Not anger, fear. Pure and simple. She whispered, You didn't need to do that. I stood then. Slowly. I did, I said. Because you never asked. You decided. She looked at me like she was seeing me for the first time. Not small. Not weak. I gathered my cup and turned toward the sink. Behind me, she said quietly, This isn't over. I turned back. No, I said, it's just starting. And for the first time since this all began, she didn't have the last word. Ethan came home later that night than usual. I knew he would. People delay the conversations they're afraid of. I was sitting at the dining table wearing my dusty rose long-sleeve blouse, hands wrapped around a mug that had already gone cold. The house felt suspended, like it was waiting. He didn't take his shoes off, didn't sit down. He stood across from me and said, Vanessa told me you talked. I nodded. Yes, I said. We did. He rubbed the back of his neck. She's upset, he said. Of course she was. I asked him, Are you? He hesitated. That hesitation hurt more than any answer. I just don't understand why you went to a lawyer, he finally said. That feels extreme. Extreme. I laughed quietly. Ethan, I said. Your wife told me to leave my own house. He frowned. She suggested space, he corrected automatically. That's when I realized something. Those weren't his words. They were hers. I stood up slowly. I raised you, I said. I know when you're repeating something you've been taught. He looked away. I took a breath, kept my voice steady. I didn't go to a lawyer to fight you, I continued. I went because I was being erased. He looked at me then. Really looked. What do you mean? I mean, I said, you stopped seeing me as your mother and started seeing me as a problem. His jaw tightened. That's not fair. No, I replied. It's accurate. Silence fell between us, thick, heavy. I softened my tone. Ethan, when you were sick as a child, did I ever hesitate? He shook his head. When you needed money, time, a place to land? No. And yet, I said gently, when I needed safety, you chose peace. He swallowed hard. I was trying to keep everyone happy. I nodded. That's the mistake, I said. Someone always pays for that. His voice cracked slightly. Vanessa feels like you don't respect her. I stepped closer. I respected her enough to leave quietly, I said. She didn't respect me enough to tell the truth. He sat down then, finally, like his legs gave out. I didn't know it got that bad, he whispered. Yes, I said. You did. That landed, because deep down he knew. He just didn't want to face it. I placed my hand on the table, not on him. I didn't raise you to abandon people quietly, I said. And I didn't raise you to let someone else decide my worth. Tears filled his eyes, but I didn't move, because comfort would have let him escape accountability. I love you, I said, but love doesn't mean I disappear. He nodded slowly. I don't know how to fix this, he said. I said the truth. You don't fix it, I said. You face it. He looked up at me, scared, conflicted, smaller than I'd ever seen him, and for the first time. He understood the cost of his silence. Vanessa didn't wait long. People who rely on control never do. The next morning, she went straight for optics. I was in the living room wearing my soft sand-coloured cardigan, flipping through mail that had somehow stopped being addressed to me months ago. That's when I heard her voice. Too sweet, too loud, on the phone. I'm just worried, she said. I don't think she's stable right now. I didn't look up, because I already knew who she was talking about. She paced near the window, wearing her tailored black blazer, phone pressed tight to her ear. I mean, she talks about lawyers, ownership, all these things, she continued. It feels paranoid. Paranoid. That word was calculated. She wanted witnesses. I stood slowly, walked into the kitchen where she could see me clearly. She didn't stop talking. She's confused, Vanessa added. I think the stress is getting to her. I waited. Then she hung up. She turned and smiled. Oh, Rose, she said lightly. I was just talking to my mom. Of course she was. I nodded. That's interesting, I said. Because I was just about to call mine. She frowned. I didn't mean anything by it, she said quickly. I'm just concerned. Concerned. The most dangerous word in a manipulator's mouth. I've already spoken to my lawyer, I said calmly. And my doctor. Her eyes flicked. Doctor? Yes, I replied. He says stress causes symptoms, not insanity. She laughed nervously. I think you're taking this too personally. I smiled. No, I said. I'm taking it seriously. Ethan came down the stairs then, hair messy, eyes tired. What's going on? He asked. Vanessa rushed to him. I'm scared, she said, gripping his arm. She's threatening legal action, I corrected her. I'm protecting myself. Ethan looked between us. I just want peace, he said. I looked at him gently. Peace built on lies doesn't last, I said. Vanessa snapped. Are you trying to ruin my marriage? I didn't raise my voice. No, I said. I'm refusing to lose my life quietly. She turned to Ethan. She's doing this on purpose, she said. She wants control. I pulled the folder from the side table. Neat. Organized. Documents inside. I already have control, I said. Legally. I handed Ethan the papers. He read. Slowly. His face changed. What is this? He asked. The deed, I said. With dates, signatures, everything. Vanessa stepped back. That's not relevant, she said quickly. Ethan looked at her. It is, he said quietly. The room went still. She tried one last time. You're choosing her over me, she whispered. I spoke before he could. This isn't about choosing, I said. It's about truth. Ethan took a breath. No one's taking Mom's house, he said. Vanessa stared at him. For the first time, her mask slipped completely. Cold. Sharp. You'll regret this, she said. I met her eyes. Maybe, I replied. But I won't disappear. She walked out of the room. The door didn't slam. It didn't need to, because the sound everyone heard was Control leaving the room. The house didn't feel louder after she left. It felt honest. I stood in the living room wearing my soft pearl grey sweater, hands resting at my sides, listening to the quiet settle into the walls. Ethan sat on the couch, still, processing. He looked older than he had the day before. That happens when illusions break. I didn't know she'd go that far, he said finally. I nodded. You didn't want to know, I replied. He didn't argue. That was new. I should have protected you, he said. I walked over and sat across from him. Not too close. Not far. Ethan, I said gently. I didn't need protection. He looked up. I needed respect. That landed. He swallowed hard. I was scared, he admitted, of losing my marriage. I said the truth. And I was scared of losing my dignity. We sat there for a moment. Two truths, both heavy, but only one had been ignored. That night, Vanessa didn't come home. She didn't text. She didn't call. And for the first time in months, I slept deeply. No racing thoughts, no rehearsed conversations, just rest. The next morning I made coffee. Strong, rich. I wore my clean white morning blouse, stood by the window, and let the smell fill the kitchen. No one complained. Ethan came in quietly. I told her she needs time, he said. Space. I smiled softly. Space can be healing, I replied. Days passed, then weeks. Vanessa moved out. Temporary, they called it. I didn't ask questions, because for the first time I wasn't waiting for answers. Ethan started talking again, really talking. Not repeating, not defending, listening. One afternoon he said something I never expected. I forgot you were a person, he said quietly. Not just my mom. I looked at him. That happens, I said, when people get comfortable. I didn't punish him. I didn't gloat. I didn't chase apologies, because real power doesn't need witnesses. Months later, the house felt different. Not because Vanessa was gone, but because I no longer felt small inside it. I rearranged the pantry, opened windows, played music. I existed fully. And one evening, as I folded laundry in my soft sky blue cardigan, Ethan stood in the doorway. I'm glad you stayed, he said. So was I. But not for the reason he thought. I stayed because I remembered who I was. Not a guest, not an obstacle, not a problem to manage. I was a woman who built a life. A mother who gave without keeping score. And someone who refused to disappear politely. And if there's one thing I learned through all of this, it's this. Sometimes the most shocking thing your child can say isn't about a house. It's about who they think you are, and sometimes the quietest fight is the one that gives you yourself back.